The G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group meeting is currently underway, bringing together member nations to discuss strategies for combating corruption. Hosted by South Africa's Special Investigative Unit and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, the gathering seeks to enhance global efforts in tackling financial crime and improving governance.
I'm now speaking with Advocate Andy Mothibi, the head of the SIU, who also happens to be the chair of this working group that we are attending today. Advocate, thank you so much for your time. Now, you deal with corruption. That's the core task of what your entity does. In terms of what we have on the table regarding legislation, regarding loopholes, bureaucracy, How are you hoping that what is going to come out of this 3-day session, this 3-day program, how are you hoping that that's going to close loopholes for how your department or your entity is able to do its job?
Right. No, thank you for that question. The 4 priorities that we have put forward as South Africa, which is number 1, the strengthening of public service, transparency and integrity. That's the first one, right? As you know, that as part of our investigations, and I'm talking SIU, the DPCI, ID, and all the other agencies, part of our experience is that we find that there's usually collusion, between public sector and private sector. And in public service, it's officials that are getting involved. So part of what we are discussing here in the first priority is to improve the integrity and the transparency and accountability of public service. And that's going to go a long way in informing our legislation. As you know, that there's a legislation that's colloquially called PAMA, which is the Public Administration Management Act, that seeks to professionalize the public service, right? So most of the comments that are coming in here will go into either legislative amendments or regulations so that we strengthen the public service. The next priority is around enhancing measures for asset recovery, right? Again, our experience as we investigate is that those who are corrupt and they siphon money, they gather the assets, they get the assets corruptly. In many instances, those assets end up outside of the country. So number 1, we'll talk about measures to enhance asset tracing, asset recovery, but also international cooperation, right? In terms of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which covers the first priority as well around integrity of public service, it also covers asset tracing and forfeiture. So in terms of that, we need to look at how is it that we enhance, our collaboration as G20 countries, our cooperation, and you would know about the instrument called mutual legal assistance. While that is very important, but there's also a period called pre-mutual legal assistance, which is informal. Those informal interactions between the countries are very critical because, for example, we would probably know of the assets that are in South Africa, stolen from another country, right? And then we should now be quick, informally interacting with that country, knowing where the assets are, be able to know that if you go through the formal process, we'll be able to freeze and then secure them, right? So that's the asset forfeiture. Again, the discussions here are quite wide enough that they should again go back into whether we review, the legislation. Another priority, which is the third, is the inclusion of the whole of society in the fight against corruption, which is the inclusion of business, youth, civil society, women, and all other role players, academia, traditional leaders, and all of that. So this is a very interesting part, and it's dealt with in Chapter 13 of the convention. Chapter 13 really says we need to include other stakeholders, but and as G20 countries now, we are sharing best practice, and that you will finding prevalence also in the prevention of corruption, because we need everyone, to be able to come up with the measures to prevent and deal with various sectors. So the last priority that we have chosen and prioritized is the protection of whistleblowers. As you know, that this is very topical. We have experienced instances where some of the whistleblowers have lost their lives. But as government, we have also taken steps to review the legislation. The Department of Justice is leading that process. So here, there's a lot of discussion that will come up, and that's coming up, I think, tomorrow or day after. But part of the discussions would be to review, look at the lessons learned, look at the case studies, look at what is it that as countries we can do to really ensure that the measures, legislative policies to protect whistleblowers are enhanced in the interest of ensuring that whistleblowers feel protected, that they can come up and report. We need them. We need the whistleblowers, otherwise we won't be able to crack these cases.